Then it shows the go live button. And I've also have been working on my mobile app for Magic the Gathering because someone left me feedback and it motivated me to do a bunch more work to clean up the interface. So spent a lot of time on that as well. Pretty busy with that. What else have I been doing? I haven't really done a whole lot. I'm trying to think. Oh, so I've started running again. I'm trying to get back to running a 5K, which if you've never ran a 5K before, can be tough. So I'm kind of I mean I used to run all the time. I played soccer, and I'm trying to ease back into it to get into running again, because at my youthful spry age my knees are starting to hurt a little, so I'm trying to be careful and not like overdo it. So I think I've done like 43,000 steps worth of running in the past like week, 2 weeks, something like that. I've also started meal prepping, so trying to, you know, be a little more mindful of what I'm eating. We'll see. I mean, I don't know if I can ever get away from monsters forever, but for now, not a monster. All right, let's get into this. I want to go over a little bit more on Briarthorn. I want to show off a little bit of my mobile app, and then I found a interesting article about C++, a data structure coming in C++ 26 that I kind of want to go over and see what it's about. I didn't really dig into it too much because I figured it'd be kind of interesting to review on stream. But I'm kind of curious to see how it compares to a vector, and I think someone did like a comparison of the two, so I'll be digging into that. So let's do this. Ooh, ads already. Man, ads are lame. They're just not worth it. I don't even know how I know. Does Twitch let me know when an ad is happening? Twitch tells me you're back. Welcome back. Yeah, Twitch does not tell me, or maybe I don't know how to find it, when an ad is actually happening. Ooh, I think there's a button for me to cause an ad. Maybe I should do that on my bathroom breaks. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, Briarthorn. For those who don't know, as I'm building this application, C++, QtQuick, QML, all that fun stuff, little hints of JavaScript, if you will. I'm going to, or I have been, automatically releasing updates to my website, briarthorn.game, and it's available for anyone to try just via this try it button. Oh, that's a good idea, Jan. Use stream elements. I'll have to look into that. So, made some changes here. Still not a whole lot of gameplay, mostly interface stuff. A little bit of gameplay, but not a whole lot. But I've added some ability buttons. The idea being, like, you're going to fly this thing, you're going to want to be able to shoot weapons or use defensive abilities, so on and so forth. And then, of course, on desktop, you can go full screen to get a better idea of what this would look like, you know, playing on your desktop. but since you guys are watching via this stream, we'll do it like this. Uh-oh. That's not supposed to happen. Is that a bug? Are you kidding me? Live demo? Seriously? How are you gonna do me like that? All right, here we go. Anyway, so ability buttons for you to use, click on or use a key binding for, steering, all that fun stuff. Wheel up, wheel down for the mouse will let you range in, range out, so you can either get like higher fidelity resolution of what's happening near you, or if you want long range idea of what's happening around you kind of thing. And then see if I can do this. Oh, looks like it picked it up. Oh, I'm getting my wires tangled. Oh, my wires are tangled. Oh, wires are tangled. As soon as you use your joystick, it swaps over to gamepad key bindings. So I've got that working. So I'm pretty happy with that. And then for mobile, of course, see if I can, I'm gonna try and do this. I have different touch controls to use the abilities and of course steer, so that's still there. So that's what I've done over my streaming break, if you will. And of course all of that's available, source available in Awin in GitHub. And then I've also, of course, I've showed this a little bit in my early streams of the mobile app I've been working on. This app I'm actively working towards trying to release on, you know, Google Play Store, Mac App Store, that kind of thing. And if you're a Magic the Gathering fan, it's a life tracking app. But the thing I am trying to do a little different is a little more stat recording. So tracking different actions that occur in a game of Magic the Gathering. So I'm wanting to be able to record all of that, and then it's just for fun. If you want to see how like your deck plays over the course of multiple games, what your like average turn length is, things like that. It's just there to, for those who like numbers and like to read stats, it's just there for fun. And then I think long term, if I'm able to get enough users who would want this, I would open up a cloud service to store all of the data for you. Otherwise, you know, you'll be able to keep your stats local to your device, and then it's on you, of course, to manage your files and all that. But cloud service someday, along with LAN. So this is a big one. I know that people around me, near me, and myself included, don't always want to hand over your phone to the center of the table for everyone to use, especially if you're getting notifications, text messages, people trying to get a hold of you like during a game. So the idea here is eventually, and I don't recall if I got a screenshot of it. Yeah, so eventually you're going to be able to host a room for your mobile app or for your like Magic the Gathering game, and then anyone else using this app can connect to that room if you are all on the same Wi-Fi network. Otherwise, I could, and you kind of see there's a locked version here. I've tested it a little bit. It is possible. The problem is I'm using a service. It's called Firebase, I think, a database service. So it would cost money in some fashion. But I could make it to where you don't need to be on a local Wi-Fi. As long as you have an internet from something, then you could also join a room. So that's what I've been working on building up, and kind of this is kind of becoming my thing anything I am actively developing, it's available to try it out on the website and then provide feedback, that kind of thing. And another piece of this equation, the struggle has been in a game of Magic, when you have multiple actions occurring, you don't want to spend all of your time doing data entry. And this has been a tough, very tough problem to solve, and I still don't think I have it quite right. At the end of the day, unfortunately, I think the only real solution here is some kind of like AI voice listener that can translate the conversation around the table into game actions. But that's not a can of worms I want to even attempt to open right now. So what I've done is, say like you're the red player and you want to do commander damage to the green player. You can drag towards the green player, choose commander, do 4 damage, and then accept, and now you've done commander damage to the green player. Let's say you want to do just regular damage to everyone. Well, now you can drag across all 3 and say you want to do damage. All right, I do 4 damage to everyone, that kind of thing. And then you have a timer here. You can end your turn, you can grab priority, you can resume your turn, pass your turn. Let's see, what else do I have? Poison counters, so someone does poison to you, things like that. And then you have game history, so you can kind of review the current status of the game, what has occurred during the game, what turn you're on, what round number you're in. This is more of a desktop version off to the side for extra data, things like that. And then you also have your charts, so you can review your charts. All of this would work on mobile as well. And when you load this app on your phone, it will appear as like a mobile app. So that's what I have been busy with, and really why I haven't been streaming, because my mind's been focused on getting this up to snuff, because someone sent me an email saying, hey, I really enjoy using this and here's a list of bugs. I'm like, oh, thanks for reaching out, let me fix those for you. So that's what I've been doing. Now, C++. I have been excited for Standard Hive because it looked so cool. It looked like a fixed version of a linked list. So you get like kind of the benefits of easily inserting and removing elements without the cost of having to traverse all the time. And I think it's unordered, I think, for the most part, so, and has stable iteration, or like stable iterators. And my understanding is it's going to iterate better than a linked list and insert remove better than a vector. So it's kind of a like halfway point between a vector and a linked list. Hey Patrick, how's it going? So I want to take a look at this article because I saw this on I browse Reddit RCPP all the time, and I saw someone post this and I was like, oh, that looks really cool, but I'll watch it on stream, or I'll read it on stream since I've not looked at this yet. So one thing I want to do real quick, because I'm not like, I have a general idea of what I think a hive is. I think it's based on some kind of data structure or open source library called Colony or something like that. I don't know. So I'm going to use this opportunity to learn as well. But my understanding is it's almost like, I almost picture it like a standard deck. And a deck, as I understand it, is going to have like a little block of memory linked to another block of memory, linked to another block of memory, etc. And I think it's a double-ended Q, so you can go either direction. So I'm assuming that means you can go this way as well. But I think that's like generally how a deck works, but it guarantees order. So if I add an element here at the beginning, it will always be at the beginning. Yeah, I can zoom in a little bit. I think. Enhance. Wait a minute. Enhance. Enhance. Oh, can I pan? Here, is that better? Really, what I need to do is just draw bigger. I'll work on that. So, with a deck, I'm trying to like, I need to get this mic in front of me. Well, that's the thing, Jan. Oh, that's a great question. I don't know yet. I'm assuming this article that I'm going to go over is implemented in GCC. I'm assuming, just because GCC tends to have the earlier implementations. But maybe we will figure that out. But I'm hoping it's coming soon, right? Hey, Hick, how's it going? So, a deck, you can insert to the front, which means you're going to have some kind of pointer to it, right? Maybe just the literal address to this block of memory. And then you can also insert at the back, which tells me you're going to have some kind of pointer to the back as well, right? So you got like the tail and the head. So with a deck, the idea is with stable iteration, you get the benefit of when you need to grow the container, your iterators, so essentially a pointer to this location, we'll just say iter, that won't change. Whereas, say you have a vector, let's see, this is a deck. A vector, you're gonna have like a static block of memory, like underlying. Under the hood, a vector is a static block of memory. Might be using the wrong vocab there. Fixed size block of memory. Let's say that. So if I go to push and my memory's full, well then obviously I gotta do something like that. And depending on the implementation, it's either going to be like 1.5 or 2 times increase, and then copy all the elements into memory, and then insert the new element here, right? Well, when that happens, if you had an iterator here, well, it's no longer pointing to valid memory, right? It's an unstable iterator when increasing or allocating new elements into a vector, push back, in placing back into a vector. This becomes unstable. And this, in my younger years, bit me a lot because it's just not something you think about. It's like, oh man, I could just keep an iterator to my, especially when I'm like making a game and I need to reference something, I could just keep an iterator to my game entities and use them whenever I need them. And then it turns out some entity over here, to relate to Briarthorn, shoots a bunch of missiles, adds a bunch more entities to the vector, and now my game crashes. Well, that iterator was invalid. So what do? Well, you could know ahead of time how many elements you're going to have at most. Kind of risky, because unless you specifically design your game as like some fixed thing, then you're going to run into situations like I just described where maybe a player, maybe you designed the game for someone only shooting 5 missiles ever, and a player gets the bright idea to shoot 6, and then it's like, oh shit. So I don't typically like that design. Any kind of rigidity that you are adding to your application to start with, especially like when you are building from scratch, you're instead of planning ahead, you want to enable a little bit more flexibility for design. Now, the downside is more memory consumption versus if you go the fixed size route, well, you have to do a lot more planning ahead. The downside is any change in requirements could greatly impact your ability to add features or refactor, that kind of thing. So anyway, deck, vector, these are probably maybe a standard map, unordered map as well, but vector by far are like the most common data structures that I use professionally. And vector has always been king because it's sequential. It fits in memory. It's cache friendly. Even your like inserts and deletes, while technically can be slow due to the nature of this fixed element, could still be faster than something like a linked list because it can all be done in the cache versus having to reach out to RAM or something if you are using a linked list. So with this in mind, standard Hive, what do we think Hive is? Can I pan? How do I pan? I have a touch screen. How do I zoom? I don't know how to use. I think I'm on a website called Excalidraw. I don't want to necessarily erase this. I just want to kind of like move it. Let's do this. Yeah, there we go. Check that out. Let's move this over here. Where's my pen? Is that it? Patchy Hive. So in C++ 26, we are getting something called standard Hive. Ooh, spacebar. Oh, you're so good. Thanks, Jan. I appreciate it. So standard Hive. Oh, and that's something I didn't talk about. Well, now that I can do this. With the deck is also an implementation defined fixed block of memory. For any time you need to grow the deck, it's going to allocate that fixed block of memory, which I don't think is a lot. And it's been years, but I know like with Microsoft STL library, I was able to just go into the header file and see a macro that defined the size. I could be wrong at this point, but I vaguely recall it being something like 16 or 24 bytes or something. It's like small. With a Hive, I think that changes. I think a Hive, similar to a deck, is going to be larger blocks of iteration friendly memory. And I'm simplifying this because, to be clear, I don't 100% know what the underlying implementation of this is, other than I've read it has to do with something called a colony, which might be the name of the data structure or an open source library, something like that. So I have to smarten myself up as well, but I'm hoping this article I'm going over will go over this too. But basically, my understanding is with a Hive, you get kind of the benefits of a vector, or most of the benefits of a vector, which is that like cache friendliness, but you also get the benefits of linked lists when it comes to inserts and deletes. So, and I think like game developers have implemented something like this in some fashion forever. right? You have a fixed pool of entities, and instead of like actively deallocating an entity over the course and reallocating over the course of a game, you just kind of leave it stale, and then when you're ready to use it again, you reuse it. You maybe you initialize some new fields on it, or define different values. I think that's what Hive is trying to do, but provide an STL version so that you don't have to implement it yourself. Now, there could be a problem there, because anyone who is interested in that level of control or memory with something like Hive, maybe they want to implement it themselves anyway. But maybe for someone like me who doesn't, like, from a professional business perspective, where I don't have that hard requirement to get that low level, Hive might be a good solution. I don't know. And then the other thing that I know about Hive is the ability to remove is really quick. And it's doing something that I've actually have implemented myself before, and some of you probably have as well. And that is, when you go to remove, let's say you want to remove an element somewhere in this data structure, right? In this block of memory. Instead of removing from the middle of this element, you can swap it with the end of an element. You perform that swap, and then you can just what's a good way to what does a pop look like for an arrow? I guess like this. You just pop it off. Pop. And so when you pop it off from like the end of a data structure, you don't have to sit there and move a bunch of elements. Like, say if I was in a vector and I needed to erase in the middle of this data structure, well, then all of these elements here would have to get shifted one by one as part of that remove operation to keep the guarantees of a vector: contiguous elements in memory, fixed or like underlying array. Whereas by swapping to the end and popping off, you don't do any kind of shifting, any kind of copying, anything like that. So it becomes a lot quicker. So when you need the benefits of doing that, inserts, deletes, then you get that with Hive, as I understand it. Now, I am not an expert with Hive because it's not out yet. I have not used it yet. So let's read this article and see what we learn. What do you use? What do you index it with? That is a great question. Actually, you know what? It might not have an index. I really don't know. Let's find out. These are my current assumptions about how I think it's going to work. And okay, so even this picture, which is like a colony of bees, a hive, if you will. I think these are play on words that I'm just now realizing. But yeah, so you've got your like blocks of memory. It might be Dow. It might be. I'm going to pause the music for a sec. All right. How fast is C++26's Hive? C++26 adds a new container to the standard library, standard Hive. It is meant to occupy the ground between vector and list. Okay, so first assumption is kind of what I was thinking. It's somewhere between a vector and a list, with list being probably one of the worst data structures you could possibly use. With the caveat, there's always a use for everything. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it, right? In the 15 years that I've been doing this, I've never needed to use a list personally, because even when I needed list-like functionality, the amount of data I was processing never really got to a point that it made vector worse. And so even when I'm inserting and deleting in the middle of a data structure, a vector was still good because it fit in cache. Like a vector, it keeps its elements in contiguous blocks of memory, so scanning it does not require you to chase a pointer for every element. Like a list, it never moves an element once it has been inserted. Your pointers, references, and iterators stay valid, and you may erase any element in constant time without disturbing the others. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So stability with iterators, and then constant time removal because of that swap idiom, I think. Internally, a hive is a linked list of blocks. Each block carries a skip field. Ooh. Do I know what a skip field is? I don't know if I know what a skip field is. Off the top of my head, I would assume it's something that denotes how many spaces something is located. I'm not sure. I've heard of this before, but I don't remember. A small integer per slot that tells the iterator how many erased slots to jump over. Oh, okay. So yeah, so I think that means you can have in this hive structure, you're going to have valid. Those are check marks, by the way. You're gonna have valid memory, but then you might have invalid memory. And so it sounds like each element or slot contains a little bit of data that says, hey, next to me is 5 invalid elements. So it keeps the memory allocated and ready, but it's invalid memory. Like the data structure will automatically handle that for you. So when you go to iterate over this block of memory, it will still iterate only over valid entities. That's actually kind of cool, because I have implemented something like that myself before with like a custom entity manager. No standard library ships standard Hive yet to my knowledge. Fortunately, there is an implementation PLF Hive by Matt Bentley as a single header file that you can use today. Oh, I was thinking something was starting to show up in one of the implementations. Interesting. Okay. I use the elements of type unsigned int 64 GCC 16.1 with optimizations, native architecture on an Intel Xeon Gold. Holy crap. That's like that's a server CPU. Pinned to 1 core. Numbers are nanoseconds per element, along with the cycles and instructions retired per element. Hey, hot dog. How's it going? We start from an empty container and append 1,000,000 values. The container is then destroyed. Append. Okay, so I'm assuming that means we aren't doing there is a reserve option. Okay, never mind. So I assume this will be the quickest. Vector reserved takes about 0.29 nanoseconds per element to append 1,000,000 elements, which is about 8 instructions per element. So vector is about the same thing, but it's going to be slower here because every time you reach the limit of the pre-allocated block of vector memory, it's going to 1.5 or double, and it will eventually get to a point where it will no longer like do that double and copy. So that's good. And this gets tricky too, depending on how you benchmark. If they do this, they may or may not be benchmarking the time of of like the new array allocation and copy. I'm assuming they are, though. And then compare that to a hive. A hive takes 1.57 nanoseconds, guys. Nanoseconds. Jesus. So 1.5 nanoseconds per element and about double the instructions than a vector. So, I mean, vector's just the best. You're never beating a vector. It's literally an array. An array is the best data structure ever. Because that's kind of how computers were built around. And then if you do a reserve, it takes longer to populate. Why would that be? Studying for your CompTIA? Ooh. I did what did I do? I did the CompTIA Security Plus training, and it was a little dry, dull, and boring. Fortunately, at the time I did it, I knew most of it just from working on the job. I did another training. I think it was like CSLCP. I don't know. It basically was like one of the hardest certification tests for like security, software security, and it was brand new, so there weren't any like training materials at the time I did this. I didn't do good. I did not do good. Oh, Michael, C++ slop. That's slop. That is a fun new term I'm seeing online. So if you pre-size your hive, why would we think it takes longer? I don't know. I'm assuming that's small enough, though, that could just be noise, error. You sound similar to me, hot dog. I grew up as a PC enthusiast myself. I love building PCs. Every PC I've ever owned, I built myself. And then standard list, the worst data structure is Jesus. 220 instructions per element to append an item. Holy. Actually, it might literally just be, I don't know what the extra instruction here is, but it's measuring an extra instruction for appending an element that's already had a data structure reserved. Yeah, we'd have to look at like the assembly or something to figure that out, or maybe just the code. What am I currently working on? I am currently working on, so after I get done with this article, I've been building a game called Briarthorn that I have in GitHub as well. It is source available, and it's on the web, so you can access it via the website. There's not a lot of gameplay yet. I'm still working on a 1v1 scenario, trying to get this figured out. But basically, an air combat roguelike where I'm going to put you through different scenarios, different challenges. Can you defeat the enemy before running out of fuel? Can you avoid getting hit? Can you use your defenses sparingly, like a flare? And then I have like my super stretch goal here is multiplayer and more like complicated scenarios where each player will use different aircraft type for with different abilities to like achieve success. So the idea is you'll do missions, you'll collect rewards, you know, your standard roguelike stuff, but instead of like fantasy, it'll be aircraft, because that's kind of my expertise. And also it's simple shapes, which means I don't have to be a really good artist to make a game. So that's kind of what I'm working on. And then I also have my if you're a Magic the Gathering fan, I've been working on a life tracking app that also collects game statistics and history that occurs over time while doing all of this. Except this app is done in Dart and Flutter, while my Briarthorn game is done in C++ QtQuick. You're getting close, hot dog, because I have been on a Slay the Spire kick this past month, and I mean, I can't say it's not influencing me. I've literally been playing it nonstop, so how could it not influence me in some fashion? We'll see, though. I bounce around between gameplay elements that I want, and so step one for me is just trying to build out a really nice and fluid 1v1 scenario that feels fun. If I can't make that fun, then I have no chance of making anything else about the game fun. So that's step one. That's where I'm at. Standard list needs one allocation per element, and okay, that makes sense, because list is doing a bunch of news for every node, right? You're literally allocating something on the heap for every element. Whereas with Hive, I think you're only allocating the block on the heap. Does this blog have dark mode? I don't know. It is a little blinding, isn't it? Let me see if let me just copy it into a regular browser, see if it changes. I'm assuming it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. All right, put your sunglasses on. We'll get through this. It's almost done. The list needs one allocation per element. glibcs, malloc, and free together cost over 200 instructions per element. It is an order of magnitude behind everyone else. That is not news. Yeah, like, the list is about the worst data structure you could possibly use for anything you use ever. No. A linked list, just the nature of how the data structure is defined, you point your current element has a pointer to the next element. And so, well, I guess technically, I bet there's implementations out there where there's a backing like contiguous block of memory, but that's literally just your allocator at that point, right? So I guess you could change the underlying allocator to be contiguous memory, basically. But generally speaking, a linked list is just a node that contains your data and a pointer to a new node. And so you have to allocate each node on the heap by default. The interesting comparison is vector against hive. A hive is about twice the cost of a vector, and it needs twice the instructions. This is the price of the skip field. Every insertion writes an element and a skip field entry, and maintains the block bookkeeping. Note that calling reserve on a hive does not help in my experiments. Next, we iterate over the container and the sum values. We iterate over the container and the sum values. So we are summing the elements. So this is this an iteration test? So vector is, again, the best data structure, bar none. Cycles per element, instructions per element, 1. Yeah, because it's the element. Whereas a list is going to be your node, which contains the data and the pointer to another node. And it sounds like Hive has some metadata to go with each element. At least according to this, next we iterate over the container and sum the values. That's a little surprising to me. I would have expected iterating over Hive to be better, but I don't know exactly how this benchmark was set up, and I don't 100% know what they were doing here. So whatever this sentence actually means, it turns out list is better. A Hive iterates no faster than a linked list here. Slightly slower, in fact, and about 8 times slower than a vector. Well, everything's going to be slower than a vector. Update. Joseph Garvin points out that I measured the happy case for the list in the instance where all the entries were allocated in sequence. The worst case scenario for list when the nodes are all over the heap can be much slower. Interesting. That probably explains it. So if you think about your data structure in an actual application being constantly used, especially if it's like a data structure that's the backbone of your entire software architecture, you'll see this in Qt with like QObject, and basically QObject is stored in vectors. So that's the backbone is a vector. So if you are constantly using this data structure over the course of the lifetime of your application running, then list could get worse because any new allocations have to occur probably outside that like initial virtual memory pool that the list was initialized with. So it seems like that's the argument here, is it's a very simplistic benchmark is basically. And this is very similar to what we were doing when we were doing the micro benchmarking with entities on my stream. God, was that 2 months ago? A month and a half ago, something like that. You always have to keep in mind the grain of salt when you do micro benchmarks like this. Just because one might show up better or faster than another doesn't mean that's going to show any improvement in your application, because your use case matters. How you are using the data structure matters. That's why it's always like, you always hear the argument like, don't prematurely optimize. You want to make sure you are measuring your use case, how you would actually use it, and not just do like, to be fair, these side-by-side comparisons are a lot of fun and I find them very interesting. But I bet for a lot of my applications, even though vector, in my opinion, is the best, I could probably throw a list as the backbone of my data structure and not see significant performance drops, because for the applications I make professionally, a lot of the performance lives in the graphics. The amount of time it takes to get the CPU, GPU instructions pushed to the GPU, that's where a lot of my bottlenecks are. So improving a vector over a list or a list over a vector would save me unnoticeable amounts of time, because all my CPU time is spent with the GPU instructions. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're gonna run into that with every data structure that contains metadata, right? If you are storing small amounts of data per element, use a vector. Just use a vector or an array. Like use that cache-friendly solution, with the caveat that, for me anyway, I'm used to like writing code for frameworks versus specific applications. And so frameworks need to be a little bit more flexible. So if you are going to do all of this memory optimization, hide it away or like encapsulate it from your end user. Make their lives easier. Sorry for the off-topic question. Have you ever used Python before, and what do you think of it? Yes, I've used Python. I actually, let's see, we're 2026. So in 2025, for a brief period, about a year, I worked for a company that did robotics. So automated forklifts, things like that. And it's funny, I got interviewed and hired for a C++ position. My interview questions were C++ focused, and then I spent most of that year writing Python. I wasn't great at it. I didn't know all the little nifty like slicing and all the different like syntax sugar that went with Python. So like an experienced Python developer would look at my code and be like, dude, what are you doing? Because I'm doing it the hard way. I'm writing my for loops manually, things like that. Whereas someone who's really good with Python has all kinds of crazy like syntax that I couldn't even fathom. That being said, I am of the camp that compiler type safety is king. I have seen so many bugs over the course of my lifetime due to implicit conversions or just code like Python or JavaScript that just accept parameters and they go unused, things like that, or functions that return values that go unused. I'm a type safety first type of guy. So if you're not using type safety, we got problems. So no, I don't necessarily prefer Python, though I will acknowledge that Python is a pretty badass language if you think about it. Just all of its capability that comes out of the box for you to basically build whatever application you could possibly want without having to compile. There's real world benefits to that, like real world business benefits to not having to stress about any of that. All you need is install Python, write some scripts, boom, you have an application. So I see both sides of the coin. Just personally, when it comes to writing code, it's just like, it hurts my heart a little bit when I can just pass in any value, and then the function that receives that value has to make an assumption of what the type is because you are the one writing the code. So you know what the types are at the time you wrote the code, but then a new developer comes in and has no idea. So I will say when I was doing Python, even though Python isn't necessarily like type safe, I tried my best to declare all of my parameters with types, all my variables with types, just to make it a little easier on me. Something like C++ that is type safe, I don't mind using auto everywhere, but Python, I actually needed the variables written out because it's not type safe, and so I needed to know what the hell I was working with. Oh, I bet there's all kinds of tools for Python that do type checking at this point, for sure. And I would absolutely be using them, guaranteed. But I didn't do enough in Python for my year of development that I got that deep into it. I had VS Code. I wrote a bunch of scripts. Like, I was working in a code base that was already well established, so I didn't have to like think too low level about Python, if you will. I just needed to look up syntax and solve the problem. You know, parse the files, sort the files, timestamp the files, things like that, right? I didn't do too much with it. Talk to a oh my god, what's it called? Protobuf. I used Python with Protobuf and C++. That's like where a lot of it was. So I didn't do too much with it. Yeah, type hints. Yeah, that's the way. Yep, I did that too. Once I realized I could write the return type for Python, I started doing that as well. Anything I could do to add type safety to Python, I would do it. But that's just me. Not everyone's going to do that. And the reason I do that is because I come from C++ and I heavily lean on type safety because it's mostly free and compile time. Oh, excuse me. All right. The vector loop retires one instruction per element and finishes in 0.78 cycles. The processor is executing several elements at once. This is possible because the vector implementation benefits from auto-vectorization. The compiler recognizes that it can load several words at once in wide SIMD. Further, it does not have to check the bit field like the Hive data structure. This is freaking awesome. So, I'll admit, I have never had to use SIMD myself. I've been aware of it, but I have never once needed to like look up any of its instructions or anything like that. So the fact that the compiler can handle a vector, like a auto vectorization optimization for standard vector like that, like that's just another check mark to the fact that the vector is the best data structure in C++, bar none. We can check this. Walk the same container with two independent iterators, one starting halfway in, and count the cost per element visited. I don't know if you guys saw that pop up, but I lost the DPI of my mouse. Oh, there it is. It's coming back. Come on. Give me 3200. I don't know about... Is anyone else like this? If I get a high DPI mouse that has options, I'm always the highest DPI. The less I move my hand to get from one side of the screen to the other, the better. Now, I'm only on 3200 DPI because I'm using like a 15-year-old mouse, but it's the best mouse I've ever had and will ever have. So I can't, like, I can't go to anything newer. Is using standard Hive reasonable for object pools? That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out, Jates. I've not personally used this yet, and it sounds like it's not out yet. So this whole article is based on someone's header-only implementation called PLF Hive by Matt Bentley, which I think they are implementing based off of the C++ standard proposal. Yep, that's what this is. Now I'm curious. Is a fork of PLF Colony. So there you go. That's what I thought. So PLF Colony is that open source library I think I was talking about. But this is based off of the proposed implementation for the standard, and I guess it's a header only. Do we dare take a look at it? Are we about to see face melting C++? If I click on this, well, it's big. I can tell you that. It's well formatted. Wow. Okay. All right. My respect for this implementation is going up. I don't know. Something about well formatted code just makes my life so much easier. Okay. They're doing their own custom allocator. All the SDL algorithm type defs are there, so you can use this implementation with all of like ranges, what are they? Finds, removes, sorts, etc. Memory alignment handling. More STL type defs. All things considered, this is fairly straightforward to read if you're used to reading C++. This isn't that bad. I was expecting worse, honestly. I mean, hell, they're using some modern stuff here. Memset, toAddress, that's pretty cool. They're using their skip field. This is actually pretty readable. So if you are that interested in digging into how, a lot of white space actually, interested in how standard Hive works, I mean, here you go. They're using const expr is trivially destructible. This is cool. This is actually pretty well written. No notes. Wow. That's awesome. We can check this. Walk the same container with 2 independent iterators, one starting halfway in, and count the cost per element visited. Okay, so this is, what is this doing? Is this the cost of iterating each element? 0.78 cycles, because you're literally just iterating the element. Standard list involves the pointer to the next node, and then apparently Hive involves that metadata. So this is interesting because Hive is solving a problem such as using an object pool in games where you have objects that have gone stale and dead. So Hive will automatically handle iterating over only valid objects. But the cost of that is iteration is slower if all you have is valid objects. If you were to compare iterating over only valid objects with a vector, with a Hive, well, now you are writing code to decide what's valid and what isn't. So you're adding like maybe an extra if check or something like that, right? That would change things a lot. He is stretched out and relaxed. Vector does not care. It was already throughput bound. The Hive and the list get nearly twice as fast per element because 2 independent chains can be in flight at once. Hive iteration is latency bound, exactly like list iteration. It merely has better locality. The locality does show up when the data gets big. At 10 million elements, the list falls apart while the Hive holds steady. Okay. Okay. I feel like this article is just showing how awesome Vector is. List Hive for 10 million elements. Okay, there you go. So for 10 million elements, you're spending, the chart isn't helping much, but I'm assuming it's one traversal. I'm assuming it's 0.196 nanoseconds per element. Erasing is what a Hive is for. So it would be unfair not to look. I erase half the elements at scattered positions using remove if. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's what Hive is for. So if we take a look at my drawing, this is exactly what I was talking about. So if you don't care about the order of your elements, such as maybe a large object pool where like each object you're going to do stuff with, but you don't necessarily care about the relation of that object with the objects next to it, then it's simply just a swap. So you find the element that you want to erase, iterator, index, etc., and then swap it to the end and then pop the end off. So then you don't have to handle any like recopying or readjusting data. What's interesting to me though, Vector still isn't that slow. Cache friendly, man. Nothing beats having data next to the CPU. The Hive wins, but by less than you might expect. In a 10 million elements, the ordering reverses 1.3 nanoseconds for the Vector against 2.5 for the Hive. Remove if is a single streaming pass, and streaming passes are cheap. Of course, the Vector moved every surviving element and invalidated every pointer into it, which is precisely what a hive promises not to do. Memory measured by asking libc how many bytes it has handed out per live element. Oh, that's not bad. What? So a vector is 8.4 bytes per element? I'm not 100% sure I understand what this chart's showing. Oh, yes. They're like, yeah. Stable iterators are pretty important for games, honestly. Being able to access an entity and keep a reference to that entity. A lot of I don't want to say simpler, smaller games, you can get away with just doing like an index, right? Just keep an integer. Or I think someone in chat mentioned this earlier. You keep like a generation handle of the entity, which is like a pointer and an index, something like that. And you like that's how you get your stability. And then a list. Okay, at this point, a list is, I mean, I knew list was bad going in. This is just kind of reiterating the fact that it's bad. A vector built by pushback has a capacity that typically exceeds its size. Thus, even if you have 8-byte entries, you will use, on average, more than 8 bytes per entry, even for a large vectors. You can recover the excess capacity with the shrink to fit. Oh, I see. Okay, I understand. Right. So it's basically saying this, I think. Oh, wrong one. So with a vector, undo. So with our vector here, it's basically like, okay, so we push back this element here that doubled the size of the memory a vector uses. I wish I could show you guys like what I'm pointing at while I'm doing this. I guess I just draw it. So like right here, right? We push back this new element. It causes an extra, I mean, it causes this entire block of memory to be allocated. And then we copy all these elements into the new allocation. Well, shrink to fit is just take what you just did and tighten it up, basically. So that's why after shrink to fit, it goes down to 8.0. Whereas a hive, you're not doing that. So it stays the same. Right. A hive is not messing with active allocations. Your pointers will stay stable. So what should we conclude? The hive data structure is not a faster vector. I already knew that. Nothing's a faster vector. You know what a faster vector is? A vector with auto vectorization using SIMD. That's a faster vector. But it is a much better list. Everything's a better list. It gives you the same guarantees that make people reach for a list, stable references, cheap erasures anywhere while using less memory. I would argue, I would almost argue that a vector might be a better list, assuming it fits in cache. Cool. All right, guys, I am going to run to the bathroom real quick, and then I have some QML for Briarthorn, QtQuick, if you're not familiar, that I want to review. I had Claude implement the main menu screen of my game. And I wouldn't even say implement, it ported. I had Claude port from my prototype, and so I want to take a look at the code changes and, you know, make sure it's not doing anything crazy. I don't think it is, but I want to make sure. Ooh, good idea. I'll change the page before I go. Here, let's do this. Shameless promotion. And also, let me figure out how to run an ad. I'll run the ad now so we don't get an ad later. And I apologize if this just causes more ads to happen, but I'm still learning. Manage. Actually, I thought there was a button. Am I crazy? Well, I'll figure it out later. I really gotta pee. Be right back. Entertainment. Oh, man. Did Trill not entertain you guys? Hey, Last Royal, how's it going? Oh yeah, music. Let's get this music going. Harvey, who would I prefer to hire for an entry position of game dev? Junior whose resume says good modern C++ understanding, or a junior whose resume says he has built a good renderer? Now, is that a literal statement? Because neither of those sentences I would expect to see on a good resume. But if you just mean in general, I would prefer hiring someone who has actively built's the wrong word, who's actively like worked on a project for sure. Now, someone who has worked on a project probably is going to understand C++ a little better than someone who knows modern C++ because they read some articles, listened to a streamer, or did some tutorials, right? I can teach C++, like improved ways of writing C++. If a junior developer is working with me, I don't mind teaching that. What I do mind is when I'm busy attending meetings, working with my clients, and I have a junior developer who is basically the guy at the keyboard writing a bunch of code. I need him to get work done. I can't be busy and then come back like a day or two later and the junior developer's like, well, I got stuck on this part early on and I didn't know what to do and you were busy. I tried emailing you, but I couldn't reach you, so I didn't get any work done. That's bad. That's really bad. I need someone who can think for themselves, who can come to me with good questions that I can help guide them. Right? You can't sit there and do nothing. And so, typically, not always, right? Not always. Nothing is guaranteed. But typically, if someone has a project they have actively gone out of their way to do for fun or interest or learning, they are more likely to align with how I think and is someone I would want to work with, and also more likely to be capable of teaching themselves. That's the important piece. Can you teach yourself? That's honestly, it's one of the hardest parts of this job. Solving a problem you don't know how to solve. That's a skill in and of itself. Someone, can you guys just take me through the course? What we actually see right now? Yeah, it's the same for any type of engineer. I am not a game developer per se. I've worked on frameworks that are similar to a game engine, so like there are some similarities, but I've not done game development. Yeah, juniors definitely need a little more handholding, and that's fine, because honestly the biggest problem, or like the biggest reason for handholding, isn't because they aren't capable, but typically, like as a lead engineer, I have a design or an architecture in mind with how I'm going about solving like the overall problem, and the junior developer just doesn't have that context. They haven't been with the company. They probably haven't met the client yet. And so they don't know the entire problem they are trying to solve. And I work with them to try and help them understand the context. But without that knowledge, it's difficult to, stay in the lane of implementation or architecture and design. And so a lot of times a junior developer without the guidance could just go off the rails and start churning out a bunch of code. Not unlike an LLM, if you will. Avoiding game dev? I've not done game dev professionally, but that's kind of what I'm doing here. So, speaking of LLMs, junior devs, all that fun stuff, I have my game Briarthorn that I'm using to explore some of this, because I don't necessarily get to do all of this professionally, and I still want to learn. Game dev, honestly, any project you work on that you find a drive and an interest, that's where it's at. That's what makes it fun, because you get to learn and you get to make something that like you enjoy, which is awesome. All right. So I have this in Briarthorn, if you recall. For those who are new, I had a prototype I did with this menu screen. So, but I did it in Dart and Flutter. So I had Claude. Did I do Fable? I actually think I used Fable to port and translate this into QML. for this menu screen. So I have that code, it's here. I want to take a look at it and make sure nothing is like egregious. Make sure it makes sense, make sure it fits into how I want my game to be implemented and designed. Because I do still need the ability to, you know, navigate the folder structure that I created and be like, hey, I need to make a change and know where to find those changes. So like something like this, it created a Boolean for being in the menu. I don't know if I like that, because eventually my game is going to have like different states it's going to be in. Maybe it's the menu state, maybe it's the running state, maybe it's the loading state, the pause state, the shutdown state, you know, that kind of thing. So this is one thing I might call out to the LLM and say like, hey, this seems overly simplified. Now, to be fair, the LLM probably didn't have the context of the fact that like, hey, you didn't tell me you were going to have all these states. And it's like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, right? So I'm thinking I don't want this. Use clauses to generate 20,000 lines of code. Third-party libraries like WASM, yep, which are even bigger to generate a nice Starlark parser. A WASM runtime. Oh yeah, I mean I use Claude professionally as part of my job, but you know, just like a junior engineer, it needs some guidance. I have an architecture in mind. I have a solution to the problem I'm trying to solve for my client, and I need it to stick to it. And if it doesn't, I gotta smack it upside the head and get it back in line. And sometimes it comes up with some nice ideas. One thing I've found useful, I am not a UI UX expert, if you will. And so sometimes I'll have it run a UI UX analysis. Now, with the caveat, I am not an expert, and if you are not an expert, you sometimes what the LLM generates seems correct and awesome, and maybe it's not. So my expertise is, oh, that looks cool. So I do it to do a UI UX analysis for ideas that look cool so that I can then like lay out the design for applications, that kind of thing. Yeah, LLM commits can be massive. That's why I try to keep it small and manageable, just like I would on a team that I'm leading. So when I'm leading, because I led how many? I had an interesting situation because I was in charge of like multiple teams of teams. And so like local to me, I was kind of in charge of, like I was leading a team of 3 or 4 developers, but then we had another team of 3 or 4 developers who were kind of being led by me as well. And by that, I mean, they had to follow the architecture and design that I laid out for the project. And then we had some remote teams for a different company who also attended meetings that I led to also like get them in line with how I'm trying to solve this problem. And when it comes to code review, like any big project, you do need to keep the code review somewhat feature contained or minimal feature contained as possible, because inevitably, because we are all human, your eyes glaze over and you're like, it's good enough. I mean, the output's what we want. That looks good. And, you know, on one-offs, that's fine. But when you have 10, 20 developers each doing like, that's good enough, that adds up. Every review that ends with, that's good enough. That's tech debt. And it just compounds into a spaghetti mess. So I haven't worked on a big team with LLMs that were this good. The last time I was on the team working on a big project, I think it was ChatGPT kind of just came out. And like, even then it blew my mind because I was like, wait a minute, this thing can do hello triangle. It will tell you how to draw a triangle with OpenGL 4.3 or whatever, 4.6. And it's like, oh, that is awesome. Oh, wait, it doesn't really compile, but still it got close. And that is awesome because back then we just had like Stack Overflow. We had Reddit and hopes and prayers that someone would answer an esoteric question you had. And then as it just kept improving, then the shift became more towards, instead of, getting chewed out on Stack Overflow, I actually get an answer immediately, and that answer works. Like, I need a question on an API, and it's like, oh yeah, just do this. So like, oh, holy shit, that actually worked. Yeah, time will tell how much better these will get. The big problem I'm running into for me is it doesn't really have that higher level system design and architecture that I would like to keep code flexible and maintainable. It definitely can generate code that will compile and produce the output. Like, it can definitely do it, but did it do it in a way that I can go into the code and maintain it when I need to make changes, when I need to make tweaks, when users start giving me feedback or bug reports and I need to go in and fix something? That's when it becomes a little more of a pain. But yeah, like right here, this solves the immediate problem like a junior developer would. It doesn't solve the future problem of the fact that, like, oh, wait a minute, my game could be in many, or could support many different states. So I would want to call this out. Actually, can I? Does VS Code let you? No. We're in main. So when everything is finally loaded, we do start menu. I'm okay with that for now. This might be a, again, this might be a thing where depending on the state of the application I'm in is when this function would get called. But the function itself is fine. Oh man. Oh no. Okay, so this is handling keyboard presses. If we are in the menu, then do a menu key press check. So this is basically going to override game inputs. The problem with something like this, again, anytime I add a new state to the application, I pause the game. I get a, like when you pause a game, you get your little like pop-up of settings, save game, load game, exit game, multiplayer settings, things like that. I now have to add another if check. Whereas if I design this correctly, I could almost load almost like a key map each state, and then all I have to do is something like this pseudocode. I'm speaking aloud, so I don't know if I'm going to land on this solution, but you guys are going to be my rubber ducks. So like game state, no, it would be like game dot game state dot key map event, something like that, right? Because if I could do this, then I could just add and remove different, essentially, pages of game state to or from my game to make changes, and then I would never have to change this again. Hey, Last Royal, thanks for the subscription. I really appreciate that. So this is something else I want to make note of. So I'm gonna, since I'm doing this kind of live and not in like a GitHub or GitLab where I can add comments, I should probably, you know what? I wonder if I should create a pull request and just add my comments there. Maybe I should do that. Let's do that. Let's do it like a real code review. That way I don't lose track of my thoughts. So I'll create a branch. This is game menu. Add port animated game menu from Briarthorn, my Flutter Dart implementation. Ooh. What did I do? Oh, I was modifying the diff. And just so you guys are aware, I'm doing all of this. Most of this is open source. Briarthorn itself is source available, which means you are free to download it, clone it, build it, play it. Just don't steal it. And then the framework, Awin, it's basically all of my CMake knowledge wrapped around the Qt framework. Qt itself is LGPL. My wrappings is MIT license, so you are free to do whatever you want with it. So basically everything in here except for Briarthorn, you can do whatever the hell you want with. Briarthorn you can play for free. But in here, I'll create a pull request. And I have all kinds of pipeline automations happening. So anytime I merge my changes, this will automatically build for Android, Windows, Linux, Mac, and web, which for web will automatically get deployed to Briarthorn.game for you guys to try. So you basically get an opportunity to actively play the game as I'm developing it live. There's not a lot of gameplay there yet. Still working on it. Maybe someday. I'm not a game developer, so I cannot guarantee any ounce of fun. I can just guarantee working code. Mostly working code. Yeah. Alright, let's review this. I don't like how... Oh, this is out of order. Alright. I don't know if that's gonna work. What's the best way to do this? I guess this is fine. Okay, so store game. This is literally like the storage of the game state. Has a reset function for resetting the player's state. I don't know with QML it doesn't really have the idea of constructors, but I wonder if I couldn't just like reinstantiate ownership. So ownership is probably getting mapped somewhere. Right here. So I'm wondering, what is this highlighting? Do we actually need to manually set each field, or couldn't we just re-init ownership here? I'm thinking something like root.ownership equals, what did I do? Entity. This is pseudocode, of course. With QML, it's probably going to be more like a create object, remove object situation. I'll have to see. I don't remember off the top of my head. Scenario duel. We have flare charges. Half-size flare pods load named so reset restores with the declaration. Yeah, see, this is... We can argue and say the LLM isn't good, or we could say I didn't provide enough initial instruction to achieve the result I want. And I actually run into this a lot with normal code reviews with not just junior developers, just any developers. Because part of working on a team is communication. You need to be able to, especially as someone who's leading a project, you need to be able to clearly define requirements for your developers to get their work done quickly and correctly. And so scenario duel here is the file that defines the scenario, the 1v1. And that's fine, but something like flare charges, to me anyway, I feel like that belongs as like data definition. So in my project here for Briarthorn, I have a database folder where I define like abilities, entities, we have decoys, we define what these entities are. So I might need to create a new entity definition for like the user player, the player of the class. So part of my game, I'm going to have different class of aircrafts you can play. A fighter aircraft, like a bomber aircraft, a swarm of drones, a stealth fighter. And so I can have predefined initial state for each of those classes. That's where I would find this. That way I can come in and be like, oh, I know exactly where to go to make changes to like the, what would you call it? The feel of the game. I want to be able to do that easily and quickly, so I put it all, excuse me, in this one folder. But because I wasn't clear about that instruction, it was like, hey, you wanted flares, you get flares. Thanks. This should probably live as an entity definition for the fighter class. And this would change accordingly, but this kind of makes sense. So this is just that ability button. And then again, I need to come up with a better way. The problem with a solution like this is anytime I add or remove a field, I have to do this all over again. Like, that's the whole point of C++ constructors, is it handles all of that initialization for me. So I'm hoping there's a way to do that. Otherwise, bummer. the menu implementation itself. We have an ownership property, the game world. So one issue one issue I might see here. I want the animated scenario in the menu to be self-contained. I'm basically using like a game level to run the menu, which is, I think, is fine because I'm not doing anything complicated here. So I need to look at this to make sure how this is getting initialized. But if it's self-contained, then I don't need to pass in an ownership in a world. It should just exist inside of it. So I'll have to take a look at that. Should this be self-contained, separate from the actual game world? I also don't want like changes made to the menu, if I go in and make changes to this menu, to accidentally change the game world. That's how you get weird bugs. I think for the menu itself being its own definition, I think this stuff is fine. It's just being used to define where to place the initial entities in that scenario for the menu. So I'm seeing maybe I need a way to overload the entity definitions, which might be easier to do if I can also initialize the game world within the scenario menu. Look into a self-contained scenario with its own world and ownership that can override entity definitions. That way, if I do need to make changes outside of the menu, it won't affect the menu, and then the menu won't affect the game. Property brains. Each live bandit's brain keyed by its entity spawn wave. So this is something I just don't have in my game yet. I plan to. I need to figure out how I want basically entity AI to behave, not LLM AI, but game AI. Like, I'm currently, my thought process is I will have different behavior types. So maybe you have like aggressive, fearful, tactical. I'm just thinking of these off the top of my head. But the idea is like an entity with aggressive behavior, it really wants to shoot you. So it's going to just like beeline straight to you to get close enough to shoot you. Fearful, it really does not want to get hit. So it's going to do everything in its power to stay far enough away from you to not get shot at, or to give itself a chance to either fly away or avoid. And tactical might be a mixture or combination of both, right? It accepts the risk. So it'll fly close enough to shoot at you, but as soon as you like show any kind of aggressive movement towards it, then it wants to start backing away. Things like that. So that really is going to be the brains. This is kind of temporary. I don't have the brains implemented. So for the sake of just having a menu showing something moving around, this is okay. System pursuit. So it's at least using my pursuit maneuver. That's good. So this piece is self-contained from the rest of my game. So that's good. A brain factory. I'm gonna have to look into this. It's not a bad idea. Call the AI brains. And then the system driver to update all the iterations. System evade, engage. So if you're familiar with like entity component systems, That's kind of what I'm doing here. I have already defined different systems to do different types of logic processing. So for the menu, where I don't need all of the systems to run a game, I just need a couple of them to do a little bit of simulated combat. That's what you're seeing. If there are no foes left, then there's nothing to evade, there's nothing to engage. And then when the clear timer is reached, we respawn. Sustain. The demo must never end. Hull and tanks stay topped and the racks reload, so blasts still land and flares still pop up, but nothing runs dry. So, this is interesting. I think for my game menu, I should have system fuel. Yeah. So I have a system here that basically updates fuel levels. So if this doesn't exist, then I wouldn't expect to run out of fuel. So this might be doing too much. For the menu scenario, not having a system fuel should achieve no fuel consumption. That means I would not expect this function to be required. The same might be possible with health by removing the weapon system. And if I don't have this set up right, then I need to do that. The idea here is to make building a scenario easy. So whenever I'm seeing the need to write a bunch of custom code like this, that sends a flag to my head like, hey, should this be something a end user of my code, end user being me, do? Or can I like clean some of this up for them? Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes you just want to give them the customization that they need. But something like this, I feel like I could just turn off a couple of systems and you're done. Tallies each side's round in the air for the engage gates above. Count rounds. I had an original requirement for the menu to reset after a certain number of rounds have been expended, but now I've changed it to like 30-second timer and just reset the scenario. So I don't even think this is needed. I doubt this is required anymore. Oh, you learned about object-oriented programming, virtual instructors? Welcome to the team. It only goes downhill from here, but it's a good hill. You guys ever see the those downhill cheese races in, is it like Scotland? Where is that? Overseas for me. It's kind of like that. You start out feeling strong and sure-footed and fast and good at what you do, and the more you learn, you start to tumble, and you tumble and tumble, and now you're just like crashing and hoping and praying, and at the end, maybe you get the cheese. Maybe you get the cheese. The Living Wave members, hostile fighters, not their in-flight rounds. What is this doing? This is some JavaScript voodoo. Oh, it's just returning a list of all of the enemies. That's fine. Nearest. This feels like a utility function. That shouldn't be here. So we're grabbing the distance to the nearest. What are we using this for? Threat. Okay, so, oh, it's set up to evade the nearest. Okay, this could be a utility function, honestly, for my game. I bet I'm gonna need that for a couple of different systems. This could be a utility function. What is the C++ market like? Well, I don't 100% know how to answer this because I can only speak to what's local to me. And what's local to me, we still need C++ developers because there's a lot of legacy systems that need support where you can't use internet connected machines, for instance. And even if you did have internet connected machines, you could still use LLMs to enhance your development. And when I do a quick Google for remote positions, they are there. They're not going anywhere. Like the headlines is all, like a lot of it, in my opinion, is going to be like marketing and, creating fear for the sake of marketing. So when you see like big layoffs and stuff, that's big companies, right? Local companies, it's different. Yeah, no, I'm with Last Royal. Fortran exists, much to my chagrin. I worked on a project where I had to modify Fortran code. So it was a Fortran physics model as an executable, and I needed to modify it and turn it into a dynamically linkable library that I could then link into a plugin and load that into memory so that I could manually drive the code from Fortran to run a physics model for my framework. Oh boy. And this wasn't like modern Fortran. This was, I think this was before Fortran 77. Yeah, like C++ isn't going anywhere. We looked at this a couple of streams ago, or a few streams ago, but there's like I forget what the website's called. Top programming languages 2026, something like that. And TOB, the TOB index. Watch your eyes. Oh god, C++ is down from number 2 to number 3. I mean, come on. It's still one of the most used languages in the world. And it's going to be a long time before that changes. R. Isn't R like a scripting language for statistics or something like that? I don't think I realized it was that popular. And there's a difference, right? Like these are now Python is popular. I also think Python probably does, I say this loosely, pretty well with LLMs because there's just so much out there that it could train on. The only other, like, other than C++, like Dart and Flutter, this hasn't really moved. I want to see Dart and Flutter move up. Toyota, of all companies, is creating a 3D game engine using Dart and Flutter that I've been looking forward to. Oh, South Africa. Yeah. That's the problem when people come by and ask like, "Hey, what's the market like for C++?" Well, I've been doing it for 15 years, so for me and where I live, the market's good, but that's because that's where I live, that's where it's at. It could definitely be different depending on where you live. It all depends on like who the big companies are around you and what languages they are supporting. And this is just a function to initialize the scenario. I don't even know if I need this. This dynamically initializes the scenario. I want to get to a point where I just define a scenario as a QML file and I load it. Because QtQuick has a loader object that can load it. Can this be defined as a QML, a loadable QML file of data? If not, I would just use something like, I hate to say it, but JSON. Anytime. I wish I could be more helpful to people when it comes to those types of questions. I can only speak to the area I live. Just know that like any of the fear mongering that's coming from the big companies and AI and LLMs, a lot of it is marketing. It's getting buy-in because this stuff is expensive and they need to win. Because if they don't win, it's game over for them. What does winning look like? No idea. The bubble bursting, probably. And one left standing. Who knows? Prune. Brains whose bandit has been reaped leave the run with their craft. Ugh. Yeah, this is an artifact of a bad implementation. I shouldn't have to do this. I shouldn't have to write custom code to remove a feature that is attached to an entity like this. This feels like it deserves to be its own system. It basically boils down to, I need to implement an AI system. Game AI system. Man, if I could figure out how to make this combat fluid and the AI good, I feel like this could be fun. If I can't, it's going to be dull. Here's this reset paradigm again. I got to figure this out. So this is what I'm doing here This is not what vibe coders are doing, probably. This is what software engineering is, I think. What more modern software engineering is going to look like going forward is you still got to read the code, right? You still got to review, you still got to make sure what is getting generated makes sense, because, and like, all of this works, we saw it working, but if I just kept letting it go without reviewing and guidance, it's just going to grow, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And maybe you're okay with that. I'm not quite there yet. Reopen the show. This is the same idea. Into constructors. QML. System evade. So it implemented an evasion system for me. Interesting. This should be a behavior, I think, not just a singular system or a maneuver. So I do have a... Okay, I know what I need to do. Look into implementing a more general maneuver system that processes behavioral maneuvers such as pursuit, evade, maybe notch. Those of you familiar with air combat, notch is where you have an aircraft flying and you want to try and like narrow how much radio frequency signal you're emitting against an enemy's radar, so you notch against them to try and make yourself slightly more invisible to their radar detection. I don't know if I want to get that detailed with this though. Kind of want to make it simpler, more approachable. View engagements. This is just... What is this doing? Fusing. Oh, the list of entities that are fusing against a target. Why is that there? This is just a view. Fusing missiles alone. Delegates are shapes, so modeling every entity would rebuild them all on each spawn, and the roster churns constantly once missiles and decoys fly. The state reads inside the filter keep it live, so a fuse tripping reevaluates the list. I'll need to keep an eye on that from a performance perspective. View menu. Okay, so this is the actual menu. So the scenario menu was the QML file defining the scenario. The menu is going to define the buttons and all of that fun stuff. Pad keyboard selector. Makes sense. Unactivated. Entries. Dual control WASM. If not WASM, exit the game. Ooh, if you're WASM, I guess you can't exit, right? You just close the browser. That makes sense. And it's just creating it's almost a JavaScript object, I think. UI scaling. It's a magic number. Not a huge fan of magic numbers. Grow the rail buttons with the window so a maximized big display does not leave them tiny. Up to 1.6. Look into adding these magic numbers to the style definition. If the menu's visible or not. If the menu's visible, reset the cursor. Okay, so it just makes sure the menu items are selected, the button items. The keyboard vocabulary unclaimed keys fall through. So this is that function that's getting called up above that we were looking at. So this is something I want to look into. I don't know if I like this solution. Look into defining game state key mappings that can be changed based on which state the game is currently in. That way, I can define menu, pause. How many different states am I actually going to have? Running. The other, actually, you know what? The other approach for this could be focus. So the menu is in front of everything else, layered, right? So then the menu has its own keys, but it's the one that's focused. And I think, honestly, I think, what's it called? QtQuick automatically supports that. Possibly Qt way to solve this is just attach key handlers to the menu. So I can have key handlers for the menu, for the game view, for the pause view, things like that. So that might also be something I do. I'll have to figure that out. I'll figure that out later. D-pad controls. This falls under the same stuff. Same axis moves the same, mouse area is the same. And then, okay, so the column is going to define the visual elements. I don't know who all is a like Godot user. I know that's a pretty popular game engine. It uses nodes. This is very similar in the manner of like, if I want a node to lay things out, I have a column node. I have a translate node, a sequential animation node. So I have all these nodes that I'm working with as well. The difference is I can do all of this in my text editor versus needing like the Godot editor to visualize everything. The button text, title text, all that makes sense. This stuff is going to be straightforward. So stuff like this, just the general like, oh yeah, I need to define a color. I need to position it. I need to give it a font size. Consider mapping, or consider using style for font size, spacing, etc. Because it looks like we are using style for some of it for the font. So style.monospace. I have a style file for my game. That is where I put all of like the look and feel definition so that I'm not leaving my entire code base sprinkled with magic numbers. Just makes it a little easier to maintain. That way, if I need to change the font size for like, I don't know, a certain category of font, I can do it in one place versus like trying to remember where I put everything or search and replace. Bunch of magic numbers up in here. I do not like magic numbers. That 26 means nothing to me. I wonder if I can get an outputted list of all my comments and feed it back into the LLM and see what it does. That'd be funny. Hello, how's it going? Sequential animation, opacity, all this. Yeah, like this stuff is easy, straightforward. This is animating the X value, the position. All that makes sense. I can use GitHub CLI for what exactly? I do use it, but you mean to like get the review output? I really appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks H. I'll look into that. Cuz I am curious cuz like I know again, so again, remember we're getting to a point I think LLMs are good enough to generate code, but you still, like, it's still on you to know what you're talking about, to tell it what to do. And so if you fail to prompt it correctly, then you're going to get a bunch of mess, spaghetti mess, if you will. And because I didn't prompt it well, now I have to review my code a lot more. Again, with the pixel size, scaling with the button scale factor. Ooh, are you? I haven't really done a lot of pre-commit hooks, have I? I think I've done something before. I used to do like Clang format as pre-commits, but it didn't work as well, and so I basically have landed on and continue to use just a like a lint stage to do a format diff on the repo to let a user know that, like, hey, you need to format your code. The automation of that any other way, I have not had a lot of success with. Awesome. Well, if it can do that, then almost certainly I can tell Claude to use it to pull it down. So I actually might try that. I might be like, hey, I left you a bunch of comments. Can you take a look at them and produce output, and let's see what happens. The problem is my comments from like a code review perspective are kind of lazy because they're just reminders to myself. So I don't expect it to do a good job. C++ is my main language. It's what I use day to day professionally. Do I prefer it over C? Only from the perspective of I've been doing C++ for so long that I don't know if I know how to think outside of object-oriented programming because it's so great. Oh, did I just break my pen? Oh no. Oh, hang on. We're gonna do a drawing test here. I was fiddling with my drawing pen. Okay, we're good. All right, cool. We're good. Anyway, what was I talking about? C, C++. Because I recently tried to learn Odin, and Odin was awesome. The only things I struggled with Odin was the fact that it wasn't object oriented, and I'm not used to like thinking in the way of writing good procedural code. So that's where my struggles were. Otherwise, I really liked Odin. C, I might struggle with more because it's not type safe as far as I know. Not in the way like C++ is, which I really, really like. So it's okay. What do I think about vibe coders? Well, it depends. How do you define a vibe coder? Do you mean someone who writes a bunch of prompts and you get an application? That's vibe coding. I mean, I can't say I like hate them or anything. You know, you do you. I don't care. But from like a software engineering perspective, I mean, it wouldn't fly professionally. So I would say, like, with what I'm doing, I think some people would see what I do is vibe coding. I see it as more assisted software development or software engineering. Like I am still in charge of how it's writing code, what design pattern it's using, how to architect it, how to make it maintainable, flexible, scalable. All the LinkedIn code word or all the LinkedIn keywords, right? Like I'm still in charge of that. I still know what I'm doing. I use it a lot for basically like a Google search. Anytime I need to look up APIs, look up how to do stuff. Oh, it's so useful. I can't speak to using AI to study because it didn't exist when I was studying. I have used it to learn some other, I say learn lightly, learn some other languages. It's definitely harder to remember how, like, syntax if I'm using AI to write it for me. So there's definitely a challenge there. But like with anything, time and practice, like you still got to do it yourself at some point. So if you do it enough yourself, even if AI is like helping you, like helping give you either APIs, design patterns, explaining big O notation, you do that enough times, like you will remember. Hopefully you'll understand it. Now, if you just never understand it and you're just prompting away, that's a different story. That is vibe coding. I like computers. Yeah, Army, you're kind of like me. I grew up around computers. I've always liked computers. I might be dating myself a little bit here, but you know, my family started out with Windows 3.1, moved to Windows 95, Windows 98, and our Windows 98 computer was when I really started to like take things apart, upgrade RAM, that kind of thing. Windows XP, and then after that, I built the very first computer I built it for Windows Vista when Windows Vista came out, and that operating system was a hog. And I had like a quad core extreme, like 4 gigs of RAM, an 8800 was it an 8800 GTX or something like that? I don't remember. It's been a long time. But I've always loved computers, loved software. So, I mean, like I said, if you are a vibe coder, I mean, you do you. That's fine. I'm not gonna hate you for it, right? But if you are looking to do this professionally, then there are still low level and higher level concepts that you really need to fundamentally understand to be successful in your career. Yeah, I like using an LLM to assist me, especially professionally. I feel the ultimate power. I can just command it to do everything I need exactly how I want it to and where I want it to do it, and it will do it quicker than I can because it can just generate so much. I just have to be careful because with great power comes great responsibility. If I generate too much, I'm still like, it's like my job's on the line, right? I'm still responsible for the output of the code. It has my name on it. So I need to make sure it's actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. And it's still like not only working code, but code that another developer could go in and make changes to, and it would still work, right? That's just how being a software engineer works. Like, that's literally part of the job. All right, all of this is the menu stuff. Okay, so with all of that in mind, we basically landed on, so I'll probably do this in the evening, maybe this evening. But the output is basically what I wanted. So visually, this is basically where I wanted to start. I wanted it to use my entities that I made, my triangles. I wanted it to shoot missiles. I wanted it to automatically steer. I don't have any of my own game AI yet, so it's very dumb navigation right now. So I need to get that figured out. But for the most part, this is doing what it's doing. Now, I didn't vibe code an entire application. I had it implement what I have already architected. And then because of my vague inputs, I now need to go back and fix. I'm not just going to be like, oh yeah, it's good. No. We're going to fix this. Working on 2 projects, which are close to being finished. I did them with my, like I said, since study program college. Yeah, as long, I mean, yeah. I know it's not the same as a calculator, for instance, but if I use a calculator to solve the quadratic equation, as long as I still understand that the quadratic equation is, ooh, wait a minute, we're gonna test myself. Hang on, I may have just dropped myself in a hole. Hang on. Quadratic equation is what? I can remember. It's been like 30 years. Negative b plus or minus the square root of... Oh, why do I feel like this is already wrong? What is it? I know it's over 2a, right? It's over 2a. Wait, is it b squared minus 4ac? So wait, is this also b? Oh shoot. Oh my god. Why did I choose this as the example? Why did I choose this as the example? Oh no. Is it... Wait a minute. Yeah, is it negative b? Am I crazy? All right. I gotta look that up now. Did I get that right? Quadratic equation. I am not a robot. Okay. My internet dying? Here we go. I'm not too worried about the IP address. I'm on a VPN. Look at that. Look at that. I got it right. Hell yeah. All right. I think I want to end this on a good note. Not tonight, Jan. I gotta get off. Okay, so tomorrow is game night. I do want to play some Baldur's Gate still. I need to beat this game. You don't understand. I have never beaten Baldur's Gate. I need to do it. So tomorrow I'll do that, but maybe I leave a little bit of time to do like an hour of Factorio. We'll see. If not tomorrow, then I will plan for a Factorio either Thursday or Friday night. We'll go from there. Wednesday, assuming my personal work is going well, then I want to keep making progress on Briarthorn. And then Thursday, maybe Factorio. And then Friday, more code. And then maybe some Factorio afterwards. Oh, yeah, I got distracted. But yes. Anyway, the comparison I was trying to make. Apparently, I still remember the quadratic equation. I understand it, right? I understand like where it came from. I went to school for it. I practiced with it. I used it over and over. I programmed the solution into my TI graphing calculator when I was 14 years old and cheated on my exams. I understand it. But I still use a calculator to do it, right? So, similarly, I have done C++ for 40,000 plus hours, which is crazy to say out loud. I fundamentally understand it. I fundamentally understand how a computer works because I've done it, right? I've done it for a long time. Hell, probably not an insignificant portion of what the LLMs have trained on has probably been some of my own code that I have submitted in open source projects over the years, right? So I can utilize my understanding to guide it into the solutions that I would have written myself. Like character by character, I would have written myself. I am doing that professionally. It's not writing code I would not have written. I have set up skills and Claude MD files to do this, to help do this. And when it doesn't, I fix and I iterate on it, right? I improve it. Hey, Jan. You still want me to play Factorio, don't you? Watch yourself. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. Have a good night, and I will